Morning all, welcome to our Sunday morning service. Last Sunday was such a blast and a blessing. We had the largest Sunday service gathering we had in a while.
Yes.
The egg hunt went, I think, really well too. We enjoyed the Easter message that focused on the Lord's resurrection to life, to perfect divine life. And I want to keep our conversation going around the Lord's resurrection story. So today, I'd like us to talk about the disciples. It's because I would wonder, and I was actually wondering for myself, what happened to them? They were scattered, remember, right? After Jesus was arrested, and they somehow disappeared out of the scenes. So where did they go? Was everything finished with them? And if not, then how their story continues in the Gospels? Did they see any positive changes in their lives? What is our guess? Do you remember anything about them afterwards? As a matter of fact, the disciples' lives changed so much. Something drastically changed them, and from that point on, they dedicated their lives to their ministry all the way. So today we are going to look at that part of the story of the disciples. Then where do we begin? To start it off, let's find out where the disciples were at the time of the resurrection and right before that. So where were they? Different Gospels give different narratives from different angles, but the Gospel of John, which is in our text this morning, it gives us the clearest clue as to where they were at. They were hiding in an isolated place in Jerusalem. Probably was the same upper room that they had where they had the Last Supper with Jesus. So they were hiding. For what? We know that after Jesus was arrested, things were never the same. The disciples were scared once the Lord, who was their master, was put in trials and put to death. So they feared for the same Jews that they may do the same thing to them. They feared for their lives. And that was why they were hiding. And then what happened? It's important to see how different pieces of the story come together. Picking up from our Easter Sunday story last Sunday, there were the women who came to the tomb. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and other women. And they came to the tomb, and the stone was rolled away, and the tomb was empty. And they met with these two men who told them that Jesus resurrected. So they made their run to the disciples to tell it. And this isolated hiding place that we were just talking about was most likely where Mary or the women broke the news to them. And that account in the Gospel of John goes on to say that at that evening, on the same day, the risen Lord reappeared to the disciples. And that's how they met with the Lord again. And this is what we are told in that Gospel. Then the same day as the resurrection, at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where the disciples were assembled, they were hiding, for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood in the midst. The doors were closed, but he showed up. And he said to them, "Peace be with you." When he had said this, he showed them his hands and his side that were pierced at the crucifixion. Then the disciples were glad when they saw the Lord. And our story keeps moving forward. now we are shifting to Matthew's post-resurrection story, and it doesn't include the disciples' reunion with the Lord in that hiding place. Besides, the account is shorter. In it, they remember where they can meet with the Lord. They go off to a mountain in Galilee where they see him in person, face to face. And that part is the highlight for today. It is in this moment and on that mount that the Lord gives them an important mission of what we call now the Great Commission. So in that commission, the Lord sends them out to make disciples of all the nations. So he sends them out. You guys, go out there and preach and tell everything that you saw from me and everything that I taught you. You go out there. But the commission was not it wasn't a wordy type of sermon. It was short. But it is wide and deep enough to change the whole landscape for them. Now, what it says isn't that you do those things in small towns in Galilee or in the land of Judea. No, rather, he tells them to go into all other nations and do those things. He calls them into ministry far beyond anything that they had done and even imagined before. And they did. We'll get to see probably next time, what it actually looked like to carry that work out for them. But long story short, it was not a small task. It was a dangerous task. What awaited them down the track was hardship, persecution, and the cost of their own lives. They lost their lives. And yet they marched through with the commission all the way. And seeing how their lives transition in that direction is something to reflect on. It can make us think that at the end of their journey, they spent some time with the Lord, but at the end of their journey with the Lord, something must have hit them hard. Especially their meeting with the risen Lord nailed it. It doesn't say, but we may imagine that in their thinking or in their mindset, they would go like, "Oh Lord, I met you again, and I'll do whatever you ask." And that was a big change. Because just probably weeks ago, they were in fear. Some of them betrayed the Lord. Some were in doubt. And they were the ones who used to argue among themselves who would be the greatest. But the whole thing started turning for them. Probably they began to see things differently, and they started seeing what everything was about. So they were, at the commission, they were strengthened to come out of their shell and take on what they were called to do. Part of the inspiration of going down for this topic today was because it was Anzac Day on Friday, and it's where we commemorate, quote, the ideals of courage, endurance, and mateship that are still relevant to this day. And in line with that, I was also thinking about the disciples' post-resurrection ministry at the cost of their lives. While I was thinking that through and thinking about the theme of life dedication, unfortunately it got me thinking that it is a value that we don't see often these days. And I mean, how often do we see life dedication to something else than ourselves? To be clear and to be fair, it is an observation about how today's world goes, not a suggestion that's what we lack here. And in fact, there have been such dedicated members of this society who helped this church grow into what it is today. People here have been part of that dedication too. So we've seen it, we've been part of it. But I guess where I'm going with this is that life dedication to something else than ourselves used to be a value, a virtue that was more deeply appreciated by more people, whether it came down to our relationship, our job, our marriage, our church life, and so on. And to qualify it further, it isn't really about how long we stay or whether we made it all the way. I think the disciples' story, their future ministry after resurrection, speak more to whether the Lord is present with us in what we do. So a question for us is then, is there a living sense of the Lord's calling in part of our lives? Do we have that sense working in us? Like, oh, this is what the Lord tells me to do, that I'll do no matter what. And here's the thing, dedication of any sort can come across as demanding. Oh, I need to do in order to not fail, or I need to get this work done so that I can make my daily living. It's dedication. That's wonderful thing, but it can come to us demanding, like forcing us, asking something of us. And yet, when a sense of dedication comes from the Lord, when it's sparked from the Lord, it shouldn't feel like a demanding ask that is forced on us. Rather, it should feel like something is on fire, something is ablaze in us, something is sparked. I want to do it. There's this voluntary volition coming out of our heart, and our hearts and our mouth will say, I want to do it. I want to commit myself to it, even when nobody tells me to do. This is when the Lord worked with us through the life of our faith and love for the Lord Himself that He has planted in us. So it isn't just a sense of duty that works behind it, but we choose happily and willingly to do so because we've experienced the Lord, His presence in some way. His living power in our lives. And it's a calling that leads to a blessing. I imagine the disciples who were terrified. They were terrified. They felt lost. But after they met the risen Lord again, they became free. They were freed from those feelings of being terrified and being lost. They were brought out of their isolated shell and fear. And from that point onwards, they did not turn back. They put all in it. Some of us may say, I'm a bit old, or I've done my part. Fair enough. Some of us may already made their lifelong dedication to the church, to their family, and so on. So maybe we don't have much energy left. Or on the other hand, some of us may say, I am too young. I haven't sorted out for myself. I'm not ready yet. But as said, our God-commissioned dedication shouldn't feel like it's another burden on our shoulder. Rather, it should come to us and feel like it's a gift of and from the Lord's life that livens us up and free us from hesitation, fear, and a lack of goal. And no matter where we are, we may still find areas of our lives where we can feel or have a different sense of dedication to something else outside of us. And it can begin now. And my hope is that we continue on this line of thoughts about the Lord's resurrection and His reappearing to us, to the disciples, and how that changed their lives and how that can change our lives too. Amen.